So yeah, thank you very much for being here today. So I would like to thank you all for the warm welcoming that you have been giving to me during this day. So just to remember, my name is Cécile Artigaud, and I'm a PhD student from the Sorbonne Paris Nord University in France. And today I will discuss one paper that I've been writing during my stay, and it is an historical analysis of long-standing patterns of mobility from Burkina Faso to Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire. And it focuses on how households have been adapting to changing climatic, environmental, political, and economical conditions through mobility. So as you may know, treating mobility as an adaptative practices and strategy is not new, especially where people depend on rain-fed agriculture. So different authors have documenting a century of migration spanning from the three countries by showing how mobility has allowed individuals to adapt to structural conditions from the colonial rule to the 90s. So what is important to note is that from the 40s, the French colonial administration organized forced labor migration from Burkina Faso to Côte d'Ivoire, and especially for cocoa and coffee plantation. And after the independence, this movement did not stop and intensified and took the form of circular and settlement migration. And it was mostly an opportunity for people to adapt to land degradation, but also to Sahelian drought that were occurring in the region between the 70s and the 80s. Therefore, what has been recently called climate migration is in fact not a recent response to climate change, but seem to be a practice that is rooted in a long-standing past. However, there is only a small body of literature that is starting to consider the limits of this practice and with what implication. So through this paper, I'm asking what happens when the conditions that have been supporting mobility as an adaptative practice begin to erode. So to answer that question, I use a translocal approach, which has allowed me to identify three historical periods where I can analyze the progressive erosion of the infrastructure that I've been supporting and product connectedness in the region. So I work with life story interviews, but I also draw on literature review. And I did my fieldwork in central Ghana and northern Côte d'Ivoire, where I interviewed different persons from Burkina Faso. So now I will go through all the three different historical sequences. So from the 70s to the 90s, Côte d'Ivoire was building its economy on cash crop, and especially cocoa, and they were depending on external workers. So the dominant form of migration was circular, and in general, it was young men that would go to Côte d'Ivoire to work in cocoa plantation during the dry season and come back to Burkina Faso during the rainy season. So we can see that the translocal logic was somehow already operating because it allowed the redistribution of risk across different space. So this livelihood system was somehow possible because of three different infrastructure. So the first one is the regional free movement. So at that time, so the ECOWAS zone was created, and a first protocol of free movement was launched in 1979. So it removed all the obstacles to the circulation of goods, people, and resources. And the second infrastructure is an ecological complementarity between the two zones, because in Burkina Faso, it's subsistence agriculture, and in Côte d'Ivoire, mostly it's cash crop. So the two regions have different agroecological calendars, so it is possible for individuals to move and redistribute risk. And the third infrastructure is an open land tenure system. So Côte d'Ivoire at that time had one principle, which was that the land belongs to the person that develops it. So it was an opportunity for Burkinabe people to settle and become somehow owner of the land. The second period, it's the period where this system start to erode. So the 90s were the period where there was a neoliberal intervention, structural adjustment plans, that really changed the agricultural landscape in Burkina Faso. So it has led to the liberalization of agriculture, then the intensification also of agricultural practices and land degradation. So the people that I interview and the narrative that are associated to this period really mention as migration motives, land scarcity, soil degradation, which somehow really show that this ecological complementarity between the two zones start to decline. And at the same time, in Côte d'Ivoire, no more land was available also for developing plantation, and there was an economic crisis that was caused by the devaluation of the franc CFA, but also because of the drop of cocoa price. And this has caused the return of many individuals that were living in the city to come back in a rural area, and then there was competition of land, and this created many conflicts between indigenous people and migrant community because of the land issue. So it was then the decline of the third pillar that I identified. And so as the structure of this translocal system that has allowed the individual to redistribute risk became weak, a distinctive feature of the third period is the reorientation of the trajectory from the Ivorian axis to Ghana, but also to urban space in Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana also. And while climate variability has always been somehow a common feature in the region, it now lands on a system that is eroded. And to face uncertainty, people multiply sites of production and reproduction. So it means that one household can run several activities across different countries. So I met one man that explained me that he was doing livestock trade in Ghana, and his children were taking care of his cocoa farm in Côte d'Ivoire. And the money was used to finance agricultural work in Burkina Faso. So the limit of this, let's say, reorientation and this multiplication of site now is the security issue that is really present in the Sahel, in the sense that there is jihadist insurgency, which lead to the securitization of border and threaten somehow the circulation of some individual, especially Fulani people that are somehow perceived as being affiliated to jihadists. And also, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso left the ECOWAS zone. So somehow now what is at stake is the first pillar, which is the free movement, that is now becoming uncertain because of this changing political condition. So to conclude, this finding raise somehow broader question about protection framework that remain organized around individual category of migrant and displaced person, and that cannot address the situation of people that face accumulation of pressure and that is threatening their mobility-based strategy. And so what this paper reveals also is the limitation of the category-based thinking, and perhaps we should try to look in some case to the infrastructure that have been supporting mobility. So thank you very much.